I'm your host, Nicole Rodriguez, also CEO and founder of NRPR Group. For those of you who already know and you've joined us before, you know how much I love interviewing top members of the media and discussing best practices with them on how to reach out to them. On this show, they have the opportunity to be the star, to share their stories of how they got into their respective roles and what makes a great story for them and what doesn't. So today I'm joined by great friend to NRPR, Seth Arenstein. Seth is the editor of PRNews, and that is actually a weekly publication that NRPR pitches when we have announcements. So it's really fun to have him on this side of the show, working with him in this way. So he also hosts webinars and programs for PRNews. And is also an award-winning journalist, so we want to make sure everybody knows that. Seth is also a television critic for a weekly column with CableFAX Daily, and CableFAX is actually an outlet that we would pitch on behalf of our great client Moby TV for a very long time. So it is nice to have you on the show, Seth. So
great to be here.
Welcome. Thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedule.
Oh, my pleasure. It's really nice to talk with you, Nicole.
Yeah, good. Well, first, Seth, why don't you give us a little bit of your history? How did you come to be the great journalist that you are today with PRNews and also writing for CableFAX? So a little fast forward into how you got here.
Well, I was born in, no, I'm not going to go that far back.
Okay.
Let's see. I studied in graduate school. I studied foreign affairs because I knew I was interested in foreign affairs, and everybody I spoke to said, don't go to journalism school, learn about some subject and you'll learn journalism later. And so the subject that I liked was foreign affairs, and I went to a foreign affairs graduate program. And my specialty in foreign affairs, you got to remember when this was during the Cold War, was defense and nuclear weapons. And so that's what I studied mostly. And I started writing about defense. I got posted to the Pentagon. I was writing from the Pentagon, later wrote at the White House, was in the White House press corps for a while, again, writing about defense and the space program, both the military and the civil space program. And that's how I got into journalism.
Wow.
And the company that publishes PRNews published the defense and space publications that I worked for initially. So it's the same company. I've been with this company for a long time, for more than 30 years. I started, of course, when I was 5. So
yeah, I was going to say, it can't be.
Yes, it was right before my bar mitzvah, I think.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, child labor laws weren't even a thing, right? So 15, not a problem.
Labor. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Well, that's awesome. I mean, and I think the funny thing is too, in this sort of new, I'll call it a new market, these new generations, I don't want to make myself sound too dated, but the loyalty that you have to this publisher and working in this magazine that's sort of under that umbrella, you don't see a lot of nowadays. People are looking for their next thing or always looking ahead for the next gig. And to have such loyalty to a great place like that, can you share with us a little bit of the why? Tell us about what makes this publishing house, if you will, so great, and how they take care of you and the other journalists that are under the umbrella.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, it's trade journalism, so you're very, very, very close to the market, and that's fun in the sense that you have other journalists to bounce ideas off of, as opposed to, especially when I was writing about defense. Let's say you're writing about defense for a newspaper in Boston. You're basically writing by yourself. Of course, you can talk to other Pentagon correspondents, but in your office, you are the guy on defense. You can't really bounce too much off of anybody else. and I always had that, other people to talk to about defense, about space. I learned from some very, very good journalists. So, you're sitting there, and I remember covering, again, this is going way back, but the President Reagan Gorbachev summit in Washington, D.C., and I'm sitting there in my cubicle, and on a Saturday morning, and I look to my left, and there's Peter Jennings pounding his copy out. And I was, in my 20s at the time. It was just, wow. So talk about trade journalism and the opportunities that you have. That's something that it would have taken me years to get to a senior position in a major paper and be covering that summit, I would say. So that's one of the nice things about trade journalism. You get opportunities early. Not necessarily ready for them, but you get them.
Yes. Well, and you've fallen into the public relations trade, right? And so that's a little bit of defense journalism sometimes too, when you really think about it, getting into the crisis comms and all of that fun stuff. I mean, not quite, to that level of defense for the country, but man, I feel like I'm on the front lines all day.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I mean, when I started, look, I was covering Pentagon briefings or Secretary of Defense, and I remember one of the secretaries of defense giving a public speech at a hotel in Washington, D.C. I was covering it, and I believe he was asked a question, and he responded to the question with some classified material. Now, he didn't do that intentionally, but those of us who covered defense, loyally, we looked at each other and we said, we didn't know how many Soviet submarines were in the Pacific Theater. Right. We just got a number there. And that was our story the next day. Yeah. And sure enough, I mean, he slipped. He slipped. He shouldn't have said that. And, you get so much information briefed at you, you can't always remember what was classified and wasn't. So the fun thing is now, like when I get an embargo and somebody says, you can't write about this until 9 a.m. because we're hiring John Jones as our senior vice president. And I go, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Not quite that level of,
No. And I've even been in a situation where I remember an Air Force secretary, again, gave a public speech, and I think it was a question, and he said something, and then it was a lunch speech, and 2 hours later, when you're sitting down writing your story, we got a phone call from Air Force Public Affairs who said, look, the secretary shouldn't have said X, Y, and Z. Could you please keep it out of your story? Yeah. And then you have to make that decision, whether you're going to do that, whether it's such an important national security detail. Do you keep it out of your story? Is it important to the story? I don't remember what happened. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember it happening.
Sure.
So anyway.
Deciding on, in terms of, even relationships too, right? Like that's one thing that I know, it always it's bothered me, I would say, in the very small, handful of times where a CEO has slipped. One of the things that I'll do right in that moment is just say, hey, okay, no, we're backtracking on that one. We're not even gonna continue this conversation. That I will give, blah, 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 because usually there's a lot of business objectives and things riding on a certain timing of whatever. And so then the relationship plays a part with the journalist, because I feel bad. Like, hey, I'm sorry for this slip, right? I personally, as the PR person or anyone on my team, sorry for this, but here's how I want to make this up to you to keep our relationship strong. Okay, you already know that this is coming down the pipe. So here's how we're going to handle this. This is actually going to be announced in 2 weeks. Would you like to break that story?
Right.
And so that's really playing with the sensitivities, right? Like, what do you think about that? What's your feedback there in terms of
Well, Nicole, that's what makes you a really good PR pro, because that's exactly what I would say. If something happened like that, I would say you got to go back to the journalist and say, gee, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
We have an announcement coming out in 2 weeks. You're going to get the first shot at it.
Yep.
We're sorry. Would you keep this out of your story for now? That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Again, I've had that sort of situation happen. But I think a really good point here, Nicole, to emphasize is when you sit down with a journalist, because this was a situation where I sat down with a CEO for lunch with the PR person there, and they saw my pad and pencil.
Yeah.
And that, again, tells you how long ago this was. So they knew I wasn't just writing my memoirs. And, the CEO made a big announcement. And so, oh gosh, I have my story. I'm ready. I'm happy. I get back to my desk and writing my story. Yep, phone rings. Oh, you know that the CEO thought the lunch was off the record, right? And I said,
no,
you never said that when we sat down. So it's illustrative. You got it. You've got to set the ground rules right away if you're going to deal with a journalist. But yeah, and the postscript was the PR person eventually said, okay, look, if you don't write this, here's the copy of her speech for tonight. You've got it. You can write your story. And so it worked.
What's the consolation prize?
Exactly.
I need to get one in order to.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And I think too, for the PR pros who are listening, always that's where briefs come from, right? Like, brief your CEO before he talks to a journalist or she, because you want to make sure that things like this, it's like preemptive strikes. You make sure that they don't make those kind of blunders. And always keep in mind, when you have a lunch with a journalist, always assume it's never off the record. A journalist's job is, yes, to make build resources, right? Journalists want their own Rolodex, people they know they can go to for their stories. But at the same time, they're humans who need to work. And if they get a good scoop, it's hard to backtrack on work when they hear something, especially something that could be valuable to their audience. They want to go and write and stop them in their tracks. So in order to sort of preempt that, tell the CEO, no matter what, even if it's a casual coffee, it's on the record. Always think of it that way, and then you'll never slip on something.
It's fun because you can play these games, and I recall in the West, was it not the West Wing, the Newsroom, that show, The Newsroom. I believe there was one of the reporters was sitting on an Amtrak, and the Secretary of Energy was sitting in the seat behind him or something, had said something, and they're talking, and the reporter's sitting there writing it all down, and that is totally on the record.
Yeah,
even though the Secretary of Energy didn't know a reporter was sitting behind him. It's a public place. The reporter got the story. So, you can play all these games, and it's all kinds of scenarios. But, if I come over to your house for dinner, and the CEO of General Motors is sitting there and says X, Y, and Z, I can do it. Now, if you invite me over and say, Seth, this is off the record, everything's off the record. Okay, there we go. That's fine. Yeah. It's different. Yeah. But again, you've got to know the ins and outs of it. They're not that complicated, but you can get into some trouble if you don't know them. It's very basic, but it's important.
And Seth, you are in a very, I think, a special position, right? Yeah. You're in a position where it's PR people who are supposed to be pitching daily to people are pitching to you about their trade, what's happening in their agencies, what's happening, in their world. I'm curious to know, Seth, how many bad pitches you still get, knowing that it's like, you're pitching a PR trade. You need to show them what you've got. Make sure that you're showing them, I don't know, that you know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm very curious. Do you still get a ton of junk in your inbox, or do people, I don't know. I know for us, we're very, very cognizant. We're, on our relationships, and it's like, this is the goal? Because obviously in PR, especially in our industry, we have a handful of friendlies that we go to, and that those are we call them our homies, right? PRNews is one of them. And so we treat that with a ton of respect because you guys are within our trade. Just curious, is that also what you get from other firms, or are you digging through your email daily because you're getting all those blasty blasts?
We're getting tons of blasts. We're getting pitches that are with misspelled words. We're getting pitches. I know you wanted to ask about my pet peeves. Here's one that I just got.
Right.
On the phone. I get an email from somebody. Hey, Seth, here's a great study on such and such and such. No date on it. No date on the study. Which right away, that's strike one. And I know that this has been pitched to me before. Maybe not by this guy, but by somebody else, maybe in his agency, maybe not. I know because I wrote that from that study a week ago. And so that's really, not very professional, let's face it. So to answer your question, yes, we still get a lot of bad pitches. We still get errant pitches, mostly errant pitches. We get pitches that don't know, people clearly haven't done their homework. They don't know what we write about. They don't know what our niche is. And, when you said you're in a special situation because you're taking PR, you're writing about PR, I think I'm in a situation where I'm a bit of a hybrid because I feel like I'm both a reporter, but I'm also a cheerleader for the industry. Yeah. So when I get an errant pitch, I'm not just going to discard it. Most of the time, I'm going to go back and tell the person, hey, this really happened. I got a pitch. We have a journalism contest and here are the winners. And there was misspelled words in that right there. So it's like, oh. So I went back to them. I said, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So yes, we get bad pitches.
Wow. It must take, obviously it does take time out of your incredibly busy schedule. Yeah, so for you to be thoughtful and just say, look, it's going to be harder for me to be a cheerleader if I don't try to fix the problem in my own way, right? You're contributing to, I don't know, making things better. So I, on behalf of other PR people, just thank you for that, because it's the only way people are going to learn. But I think so much of the problem is where senior leadership, I call myself senior, but like being in the industry over 2 decades, I am very, very, what's the word? Linda would probably be like, wow, meticulous. She's over analyzing. There isn't a pitch that leaves the firm that isn't looked at by an editor or me. Why? Because the reputation of this firm is riding on, it's still our weakest link, right? And you want us, with respect, our weakest link is always going to be the newest generation coming in and up through the firm. And without supporting them and giving them feedback before it hits a journalist, I think that's an issue. I think a lot of PR firms are rush, go and get this out. And they're not double checking someone's work who maybe they've only been there for 3 months and they haven't gotten hammered down like you need to do your homework as they should. And it's unfortunate because then you get, the tail end of it. And it's unfortunate. I think it needs to change in PR firms. I think the senior people need to stop and take that time, even if it feels like a waste of time. You're going to have a better outcome if you have less bad pitches going out.
Well, it's funny because I guess we could talk about this all afternoon. Yeah. And I understand there is a sexiness to having a list of 500 journalists writing one press release or one pitch and pressing a button and sending out 500 pitches. I mean, it's sexy. It's there's no doubt it's efficient. Less is more you're you're rowing against the tide when, when somebody says, look, if I can pitch to 10, as you say, 10 or 12 friendlies,
Yep.
tailor it to him, to her, to them, we'll probably get a better result. Oh,
Yeah.
sure, you might get some errant pickups of that from those 500 journalists. Will they tell your story correctly? Will they tell it, well? Will they tell it fairly? Will they, bury it somewhere?
Right.
But I can understand why we're pitch and pray is still, for many people, is the way to go. And it's funny, you go to all these events or you talk to people and you say, yeah, don't do that. Don't pitch and pray. Know your journalist, tailor your pitch.
Yeah.
But, again, in answer to your earlier question, people aren't listening to that.
Yeah, they're just not listening. Yeah, no, I get it. Right. And it's so unfortunate, but I think the thing is, people see the value, like you said, in that list of 500. Wow, I've vetted this list and everybody seems like a great fit. And if we just get it to all 500, even if 10 of them stick, but think about that. You're irritating 490 people.
Well, that's it.
And it.
That kind of brings up another topic, and that is exclusives.
Right.
If you pitch an exclusive to somebody and then they run it, and then you have the gall to then go to somebody else 2 days later with the same pitch.
Yep.
Not tell them that it's run in, whatever paper before. Gosh, you may have created a lifelong enemy there.
Well, and think about it like relationships, right? Like this is what I tell my team. Would you go and tell the new person that you're dating exclusively, and then tell the other person that you're dating exclusively?
Right. And
then they find out that you've told them both that you're dating them exclusively. Right. Well, guess what? You got two people mad at you. It's the same thing in media. Exactly. It's the same thing. Exactly. So,
Nicole, the thing is, I'm also thinking about all this. I mean, some of the most recent surveys of journalists, I think Cision and a few others that they all say exactly what we're saying. Journalists are upset with errant pitches, with bad pitches, with poor pitches that are, crowding their inbox. They're upset with people who don't know what they've written, what they've, the articles they've read. Another one now, of course, is PR people pretending like they know the journalist. Oh, hey, Seth, been a long time since we talked. Here's my, and maybe I know who you are, maybe I don't. It's pretty easy to find out, pretty easy to check. In this day and age of privacy and
are we connected on LinkedIn?
We're really upset with that.
Yeah. Really and I feel like there's probably this little group of bad apples who are going through and teaching people who maybe don't know yet, don't know better, and don't trust their instincts, and saying, here, this is what you can do. I think one back in the day was, oh, if you just put and the thing, they'll think that you're following up on. Yes. And that just used to make me upset. I'm like, who is teaching these people this? It's trickery. Why would you do that with someone that you're trying to build a relationship with? Do it honestly and fairly. And then at that point, you're actually building a friendship. If you connect with the journalist, ask him if it's okay to connect on something like LinkedIn or whatever. And normally they're going to be okay. You don't want to say, like, can we connect on Facebook? I'm super close to some great journalists I've been friends with for years, but it takes a while to get to that like intimate kind of, you want to connect on Facebook, like, oh, and share pictures of each other's kids. Like, that's a different thing. But if you're going to lie, I'm like, oh yeah, we met years ago, without talking about the where and the when and how detailed. Like, remember that time at CES when we were running between meetings and, I had to get you a straw for your soda because it had fallen out. Like, that, okay, that then someone could possibly recall, but that's just it's unfortunate. You don't have to go through the trickery.
Right. No, I agree.
Necessary. I agree. So, and on that, thinking about your inbox, what sticks out, both good and bad, what can you share with the audience about what you see when you first open up your email, and what to do and what not to do?
Well, subject lines, I guess, are important. I guess most people would say they're very important, because if you get hundreds of emails, you're looking at those subject lines. I try to look at everything. So what gets me excited? A pitch that's in my wheelhouse, a pitch where somebody clearly has read your publication and knows what you're looking for. I'd like a pitch where somebody says, "Hey, what are you working on? Can I help?" I'm not as happy with a long introduction about a topic that I know about already. Come on.
Right. Yeah.
And then they say, "Oh, I'd love to introduce you to my CEO," who, 9 out of 10 times that doesn't work.
Right.
9 out of 10 times that's not going to work,
Yeah.
because, why don't you ask me what I need? Maybe I do need your CEO. I'll tell you, and maybe I don't think I'm going to embarrass anybody. I think it's the University of New Haven. Periodically, their PR person literally lists the professors that she's representing. She tells you their subject matter. She gives you a picture. She gives you their email. I think she even gives you their phone number, and the topics that they can comment on. Wow. I mean, that's
Helpful. It's like
super helpful. Super helpful.
Put them in your Rolodex. They're fair game for anything that you're working on. Helpful.
Right.
Wow.
And I've had very good experiences with them, and I'm pretty sure it's the University of New Haven. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. But what a great service. Yeah. And they don't do it every week. She seems to do it every other week. But I mean, that's everything you need right there.
That's excellent. And then at that point, you reach out and you say, your PR person is given me your email address and phone number. I hope, obviously you're okay with that, but I'm reaching out because I'm doing a story on X. And then there you go. Your source is ready to go.
Yeah, that's great. That's fabulous.
That's actually, that is actually something I've never heard of. I like it.
Yeah, no, it's nice.
That might be something that, because really at the end of the day, and I'm sorry if you can hear, there's construction going on next to my building, so please let me know if it gets to be too much. But, ultimately, I feel very strongly that without media, PR people wouldn't have jobs. So why not help them do their job better? How about build relationships with them? Because if you can't create relationships with them, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, that some PR people are like, well, I'm really great at strategy, but I don't pitch. What? I've been doing this 21 years and I will still pitch. Why? Because as soon as I stop building relationships with media, even as senior as you can be, this is what makes our world go round, are these relationships. So I really love that as a strategy for just, here are a couple of, clients that we're working with, and based on what I know you cover in your beat, they're even open to you emailing them. Just CC me on it if you have to reach out to them, so I can make sure to ping them on the side if they don't get back to you quick enough. Easy. Right. Oh, so good. I love the nuggets that we can uncover. So tell us a little bit about what PR News is sort of, looking at now. What's trending? What's hot? What are some of the topics? I mean, I know that the PR industry is evolving. It has evolved so much over the last 20 years, but just to give people a glimpse into, your world right now and what you guys are really, really, I guess covering and find hot and sexy.
Well, a lot, sort of everything that's going on, diversity and inclusivity, equity, DEI, recruitment and retention. um, new technologies, of course, going back to work, hybrid work. How do you communicate when half the office is in the office and the other half is at home?
Yeah.
We still call it internal communications. A lot of it's not going internally; it's going out somewhere. But internally to your company. But somebody's got to come up with a better term for that. Let's see what else. Yeah, those are probably the big ones. A crisis, of course, is a big one too. Crisis communication is a huge one. Disinformation and what roles communicators can play in that, and how they can hopefully stop the spread. They use that same language, and those are some of the things that we're looking at.
I love it. And obviously, there's a little bit of background that we've learned about you, and you have a little bit of improv in your background.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, how does that help you in this career here, interacting with others and, preparing for interviews and things like that?
Well, it's funny. There is there is a PR agency in New York called Peppercom. I don't know if you know them. There's the founder is a guy named Steve Cody, and Steve is a longtime improviser. He also does stand-up comedy, but he also insists that everybody who works for him take improv classes.
Wow.
And I believe a friend of mine who is in PR for I can't remember the company. Well, I know she was at Court TV, the old Court TV, and she went to another company. And I remember the first thing that she had to do there was take improv classes too. Improv does a lot of things. It keeps you, it improves your listening to other people because you have to interact with them. It keeps you quick on your feet, obviously. It removes, the best classes remove a little bit of the nervousness that you have. And I took it because, we were doing all these things on stage at all these PR news events in front of hundreds of people. That really helps too. So that's why I've been doing that. And I've been studying that for a long time here in Washington. There's actually a really good local improv scene here. There are several schools, and they have theaters, and it's a lot of fun. It's hard work, but it's a lot of fun when it works.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. My little brother, actually, he's always been really, he's been great at improv. He started doing that in high school, and I would crack up. And that show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Yeah. Literally, was one of my favorite shows. I have such a respect for how you can be hilarious sometimes just in the moment. And it's like, man, it's so witty. I respect it a lot. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up because that was a cool part of your background that I thought.
Well, there are two other things I want to mention about improv. There's a group, if you get to see them, they're a national group. They go all over the country, again, before the pandemic and hopefully after the pandemic. They're Chicago-based. They're called Improvised Shakespeare. And they do Shakespearean plays improvised in iambic pentameter. And they're all improvised. These guys are, and gals, they are, as I said, I've been studying improv for more than 10 years. Every time I hear them, I can't believe it.
You're rolling on the floor.
Yeah, and they're so good. Their Shakespeare is so good that I would go to see them do serious Shakespeare. That's how good they are. There's another part of improv that's fun. It's called musical improv. You get a suggestion from the audience. You have a piano player or a small combo. They start hitting chords, and you start making up a song on the spot.
No. Yeah. Okay, so how well do you do that?
Well, I don't want to break my arm to pat myself on the back. I can do it. It's
awesome.
It's scary though. Let me tell you, it's scary.
I bet. Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh.
And there are some really good groups, again, in New York and in California that do musical improv.
I love that. The beauty of all of this too is we remember that our journalist friends are human beings who have hobbies, who do things to make their lives better, to make, that they can bring into their professional worlds. And I feel like there are too many PR people and even executives who look at the relationship not as an exchange, but as I'm giving you this, so you owe me this story. I'm going to give you this, so you should be writing this. Like, journalists are not robots. They're humans who, practice improv and do that. And I think that there's just a lot of respect that I think we need to give our media, especially in this time. You bring up the whole like disinformation thing. It's our responsibility as a team, I would say, on the PR side and the media side, working together to make sure that we are giving those who do take journalism as a profession, take it seriously, that we help, right? Because otherwise people just don't understand that there are journalistic standards, there are ethics, there are things that go into it. And, it breaks my heart when people are like, oh yeah, fake media. And it's just like, that's just, it breaks my heart. And I think that there's just got to be more education. And then there's also got to be just stronger partnership, right? Where PR people really do, work closely with our friends in the media to make sure that they're getting the best, most accurate information so that the trust is rebuilt in our, in our media system.
Well, that's music to my ears. You can keep going if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, I know we have a couple minutes left, and I know one important question we always like to ask is, how can PR people make your life easier? You specifically, if you could just kind of wish, I don't know, what is it, the magic lamp or whatever it is, rub the magic lamp, and you had one wish that PR people would follow to make your life easier, what would that be?
Take out your checkbook.
Yeah, that too.
Cash too. Cash is fine as well. It's really basic. Know what I've written. Follow what I've written. Know what our niche is. Our niche is not what you might think. It's tips, it's tactics, it's strategies. Yeah. That's what we write about. We're happy that your CEO just got elected to the Chamber of Commerce of Annapolis. That's great. We're not going to cover that. That's very nice, but we're not going to cover it. Somebody else will, I'm sure. Yeah. And it should be covered, but that's not what we cover. So pitch me what you think will work that my readers want to read about.
Yeah. And pay attention.
That's really it. It's not that hard.
Love it. And, how can people reach you? What are the best ways? Are you one of those people who doesn't mind if someone slips you a DM on Twitter and says, I just sent you an email? Would you prefer that it's all an email? Do you care to follow people on LinkedIn? What are your personal preferences, and how can people find you where you prefer to be found?
Email's probably the easiest, but phone calls are nice too. Twitter. Yeah, sure. Any of the above is fine. It's really not that. I know some people will not. Some reporters don't answer the phone, only get email. That's fair enough. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah. Call me. I'm gonna have to take you up on that. I love it. And where can people find you on Twitter so that they can also just retweet and catch up on some of the things that you've written quickly?
Yeah, it's the @ and SK and then my last name, Seth Arenstein.
There we go. I love it. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close up this amazing episode?
Eat an eggplant. It's the best vegetable.
Improv. Okay.
There we go. No, I mean, I think, again, I like what I'm hearing you say. I love the point of this show, to talk to journalists, to be a partner with journalists. I read something this morning from a media pitcher who started out as a journalist. He wrote something like, he said something like, most media people won't admit it, but PR people can really be very helpful to them.
Mm-hmm. When we're doing our jobs correctly, yes, that's the goal.
Right.
That is the goal.
Like how he said, most media people won't admit that.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, Seth, you have been.
I'll give him credit. That was Michael Smart who wrote that. It was very funny, and he's right. He's right.
Well, love it. Well, I'm glad that some of you do admit it, and I'm glad that there have been PR people who have helped you get to that point, to know that like there are some of us that are sincerely here to I say go the long route, right? Go the long route. Sit and read, catch up.
Absolutely.
Take that time, because that longer journey into a relationship with a journalist is going to cut a lot more time that you're going to need to pitch them. Now, you know what, we can pick up the phone and call Seth and rattle off an idea in 1 minute. That's going to save his inbox and save you time putting together a full email and things like that. So that brings me joy, because I think too many people are looking for shortcuts, and what they're realizing is that shortcut is making everybody mad. To get 10 stories, you're pissing off 490. Stop it.
Right.
So I love it. Well, Seth, you have been a joy to talk to. This has been a lot of fun. And I want to thank the audience, of course, for continuing to listen. I hope you guys continue to just take notes. And for those of you who are junior and you have senior people telling you build a list of 500, I want you to give them this episode. And I want you to have them listen to that. Because in order for this to get better, people need to be cognizant of the fact that our journalist friends are human beings who study things like improv, and they just want to do a good job. So thank you, Seth. This has been great. Everyone, please, if you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, maybe YouTube. We are there as well. And for more information, you can find us at nrprgroup.com. And this has been awesome. Seth, you rock. Thank you.